much for coming to this talk about Anna Comstock. I just absolutely love her. A little bit about myself. About 6-7 years ago, I decided I wanted to change my career path and go back to school, so I completely diverted where I was, my study, which was in, actually I'm a histologist by trade, and I wanted to do something completely different, and I kind of went back to an old love of mine and deep-rooted within my family, which was gardening and plants. And I, through encouragement and help with my good friend Randy, who's here in the audience, I went and pursued my Master's of Professional Study in Horticulture, and I developed nature education programs for the children in Trumansburg Middle School. And we went out to Smith Woods and we kind of tromped around in the woods, and we did different educational things. The idea to get the kids back outside and back into nature, and this may be a theme that may sound familiar to many of you, trying to get those kids away from the electronics. I loved what I was doing so much, I wanted to continue on with a Ph.D. And it was here that I found Anna Comstock, and with other friends of mine, Bob and Ed, who are also here in the audience, my love of Anna just bloomed and blossomed more so. And I want to share her story with you this morning, especially since you have the beautiful stained glass windows downstairs. I wanted to tell you a little bit of the story of the woman behind those windows. Okay, so who was Anna Comstock? Anna Comstock was known in the Ithaca area as a nature educator who worked alongside of Liberty Hyde Bailey. She was one of the first female students in the first class of women that went through Cornell. There was like about 30 women who went through, and she was one of those. And through her classwork, that's where she met her husband. That we're going to hold aside. For right now, let's talk a little bit about, like I said, what did she do? So she worked very diligently with Liberty Hyde Bailey, and together they wrote, I have some books here to show you guys. Together they wrote the nature study leaflets. And the idea was that Liberty wanted, there was a migration of farmers from the country to the city at that time. And so what Liberty Hyde Bailey wanted to do was to educate the farmers and support the farmers in what they were doing, and try to encourage them to stay on the land. He also wanted to educate the children. And so this is where Anna came in. And Anna was already on the campus working with her husband and illustrating his books. So Bailey approached Anna and basically said, would you work with this on me? And she said yes. And so together with others, they created the Cornell Nature Study leaflets. And these are a series of lessons ranging from birds to nuts, literally. And it was a very popular series of leaflets at its time. So Anna, even though she was working with nature study and she was teaching classes in entomology with her husband, she still wanted something of her own. So what she created she wrote in about her, it was really a culmination of her life's work. But I'd say it was she was about 50 years old when she created this book. This is a handbook of nature study. This is a culmination of the work that she did with Liberty Hyde Bailey and of her own writing. And she wanted to, this was something that her husband did not want her to write. This is something that Liberty Hyde Bailey didn't want her to write because they felt it wouldn't be profitable. And so she was determined to print this book because she felt it would be of use. She said in Comstocks of Cornell, she said, I just knew this work could not be for nothing. That there had to be there was a need for this, and I wanted to provide that need. And the need was to children and to their parents and to teachers. This book is still in print today. Not bad for a book that was considered that was not going to, wouldn't be a success.
Cornell Press's bestseller.
Yeah, Cornell Press. And thank you. Thank you for interjecting. Please interject. Please interrupt me. Please ask questions. I really encourage that. I'd love to have a dialogue with you rather than me just standing up here and espousing my great knowledge. All right. Okay. All right. So my search, this project started out to research this one woman's voice, and it actually turned into a discovery of who she was as an individual. And just some little side notes. This is some of the butterflies. These are some early works in Anna. She would put different things like this into her books. And this is from a set of magazines that she worked on with John Spencer and Martha Van Rensselaer, called Boys and Girls. She was an embroiderer, and she knew how to knit. So she would actually put patterns in nature at the bottom of the books that were going out, especially to the children, or that were focused towards little girls, so that they could take and use these patterns to create their own artwork and embroidery patterns. And in her earlier works, you'll see these different bands like this of artwork. And then this little guy over here was an excerpt, the little cricket, and that is a capital letter I, and so that was the lead letter, before in the writing. All of them, she created these little drawings like that. All right. So when I'm going to research Anna Comstock, where do I go to look? Well, the first most obvious place to me was the Comstocks of Cornell. This is a book that is an autobiography that Anna worked on in her, she started it in about her late 40s, early 50s, 1914, shortly after she had written her nature study handbook. And she finished it months before she died in 1930. The manuscript sat dormant until Glenn Herrick picked it up, and it was first printed in 1953. Now, one of the things that I noticed when I thought, okay, I got the Comstocks of Cornell in my hand, let's just take a look at this. So I opened the book up, and this is what I did, what I found when I opened the book. Does anyone see anything unusual about that picture? It's called the Comstocks of Cornell. That is Mr. Comstock. Anna does not appear in the book until page 18. That sat wrong for me. I'm like, what is going on here? That was a little flag in my mind. This other picture here I wanted to show you, this is Anna's handwriting of her autobiography. And I just thought that would be interesting to show. All right. So once I found this little anomaly with Professor Comstock's picture on the front, I started thinking, well, I want to take a look at the manuscript a little bit more. Let me see, what's going on there with the manuscript. So then I get a hold of the manuscript, and what I'm finding is this was page 1 of the manuscript, and you can see how it's heavily edited. And I thought, well, okay, there are editors, this is what their job is, and they edit and their grammar. I'm going to be going through the process myself one day. I totally understand. However, I started seeing some disparity, where, for example, this right here, this is, I don't know how clear this image is showing, but this is the chapter on John Henry Comstock and about his life, and there's some punctuation corrections. But then this is the next chapter. This is Anna. This is a chapter about her life history, and you can see the difference. Even if you can't read what the words are, you can see the difference in the notation. And here, for example, this is an image of a correction that Anna made, and she glued the piece of paper over the top, and then this was left unscathed. However, this is purple China marker. and and that is crossed through. And I thought, wait 1 second, what's going on here? And then I started finding this. This is the manuscript, and it's completely crossed off, and in purple China marker, and also in black China marker, and somebody even wrote out. There are chapters like this, chapters from this manuscript that are like this. And one of the gentlemen, the editors, Francis Wormuth, these are part of his edits. Who were the editors of the Comstock of Cornell? Well, there was Ruby Greensmith. She was a professor at Cornell in the Home Economics Department. She worked with Martha Van Rensselaer. She was very good friends of the Comstocks. In fact, they went to their wedding, and their wedding was held at the Comstock's house. And she was, Ruby held Anna very dearly. Let me skip Francis Wormuth for a moment, and let's go down to Glenn Herrick. Glenn Herrick was a professor of entomology at Cornell University at the time. He worked with Professor Comstock and, dare I say, idolized him. And I have found in just some other readings that I have done in the archives, I thought, to me it's very evident that the high esteem that he held Professor Comstock. He was also Anna's cousin and probably held had possession of the manuscripts because of the family connection. What Herrick did is he sent the manuscript, and I do not know their connection yet, to Francis Wormuth. Francis Wormuth was a graduate of Cornell University, and Herrick sent the manuscript to Wormuth at the university. He was a political science professor at the University of Utah. And Herrick felt that in sending the manuscript to Wormuth would have an objective eye, and he was very well esteemed as a political science professor at the University of Utah. And one of his colleagues is quoted as saying that he is one of the best professors of political science he has ever known. He was beloved by his students and well respected. He definitely did not know the Comstocks, and I think that the gentleman, when he was editing, he did not realize what he was paring away. So now that's a little bit of the backstory of what got me into the Comstocks of Cornell. A lot of my talk now today is also going to be about the archives. I wanted to explain my experience of working in the archives at the Rare Manuscript Library at Croft Library. It's like joined with Olin Library at the Cornell. It is open to the public, so it's not. So all of you could go there and do research and any topic of interest that we have within the finding aids of the archives. For example, one of my favorite displays that they had last year, they had Shakespeare's folios on display. They've got, I think, 3 or 4 copies of the folios from the 1620s, and it's just a wonderful, magical place. I love it. And here is also an example of a flag, a Cornell flag, that with the pennant that would have been was prominent at the time of the Comstocks back in the late 19th, early 20th century. This is a display that's going on right now in the archives. It's called Gods and Scholars, and I just took a couple pictures just to show you what they kind of do down there. Is they have like a room off to the side, and they have these wonderful display cases full of all sorts of different artifacts, and it's so wonderfully put together, and you can just go there and spend hours reading and learning about all sorts of different topics. And when I go into the archives, what I have to do is I am on it's called a finding aid. So I will type in my parameters of what I'm searching for and looking for, and then I can reserve it for myself. When I go down to the archives, I tell them, well, you know, Laura, I want to look at box number 8. So what then the archivist will do is put in my request, and they print out the request. This is how they have their items cataloged and inventoried for themselves. So then I put in my request, they print this out, I take this over to the back reading room area, and then they go and they use the information on this piece of paper to go down into the archives to find whatever it is I'm looking for or anyone else is looking for. And for example, on this piece of paper right here is the call information for the flag. One of the things that I have learned in presenting, or in researching, I should say, is, and this took me a while to learn, was to record everything. There are many things that I am going back and forth on, because when I was first starting my dissertation work, I thought, I started looking at things, I'm like, oh, this is nice, and I'll let it go. And then about a year later, I'm like, oh my gosh, where was that? So I have learned to record everything, no matter how insignificant I think that it might be. And I've also learned that appearances can be very deceiving on some of the items that I am looking at. And this, for example, is considered, this is an iconic picture of Liberty Hyde Bailey lunching with students. Does this picture look familiar to anyone here in the audience? Yes. Yes. All right. Well, this is what the actual picture is. That picture that is iconic of Liberty Hyde Bailey is actually a cropping. And where in the image where you think that Liberty Hyde Bailey is speaking to students, he's actually speaking with Botsford Comstock, who's attending the same picnic. So, isn't that fascinating? I'll tell you what, that lit my world up. All right, the quality of the artifacts can vary down in the archive, which is of course natural. I mean, the things that I'm holding and looking at, they're over 100 years old. Over 100 years old, and is 100 to 150 years old, because if it's from Anna's childhood, that is, or even from her mother's possessions. So some of the things that I find is, like, for example, these are two photographs. This one has some sun bleaching on it, but this was taken the same period of time of the Comstocks went to Egypt. Here is this is little bits that were in a little card folio that was of Anna's, and there's like a poem that she kept, some of drawings, and you can see some of the damage that's starting with the brittling, the crumbling. This is also an iconic picture of Anna. This is from her 65th birthday. And these photos are often glued to a cardboard, and whether it was by the people that she gifted the photos to, or she did it herself. But you can see it's stained and tattered. Over here, there are letters, and you can see the quality. It is, after over 100 years, it's faded. This is purposefully, you can't read this because you can't read this. Even when I'm holding it in my hand, I'm looking so closely at the paper, I cannot make out what it says. And here is an image of Anna. This is her I would say she's about 18 years old here, 18 to 20. And the picture has been cut by someone, probably her mother, they putting it to fit it into the frame. There is some damage around the edges, but what was beautiful about this photo, and it just took my breath away when I saw it, was that it's one of these older photos that were painted, and whomever did this painting made sure that they emphasized her very blue eyes. Also found in some artifacts, was like a collection of these different books. In one of the books, the book over here, this is Ways of the Six-Footed. Sometimes when I'm working in the archives, I find just a surprise, and this was a surprise. I lifted open the leaf of this book, and there in the inside cover was who the book was gifted to. That person's mother wrote out that the book was gifted to her son, and who gave it to him, and that Anna included, taped within this book, is one of her original etchings. I almost fell over when I saw this, because I'm like, this isn't, it's an original etching. And it's just a wonderful surprise, and it's actually one of my favorites that I've seen. I just love the dandelions and how wispy they look with her blue curtain. Here are some other things that I have found of the Comstocks in the archives. These are copper plates from when they were printing their book. They collaborated together on the Manual of Insects, and actually I think this is from their butterfly book, but what they did is they made copper plates for these images, and what was wonderful about this find in the archives is that not only did it have the copper images, but it also had the prints next to it. And as you see, depending on what it is I'm looking at in the archives, I have to wear the gloves. And here's a close-up of those copper images.
Do they use a different plate for each color?
That I don't know, because I don't know the process. My thought was I thought that they used a color and then they wiped it, but I'm really not sure of the process. Here's another example of something that I found while I was in the archives. I requested a book and I got a bunch of brown paper packages wrapped in string. These are a few of my favorite things. And when I opened them, what did I find? I found the layout, the editor's layout for this book, Manual of Insects. And it was just a joy to see. Each one of these pictures was individually cut and put on and pasted on, and then they had their side notes of how they wanted it to appear in the book. So here we are. And I just think that is fun. Okay, let's see. And here we are. And here's another view. I just think these images are so beautiful. And you can see, I'm sorry.
What year did that be published?
1895. And actually, for being published in 1895, these are actually really in wonderful condition. And I think it's because they are wrapped in the brown paper. But Professor Comstock was noted for his study on the veination of insect wings. So to me, it's fun and interesting to see, just the evolution of his knowledge as well.
So each of these images is hand drawn and then copper plated?
Yes. Well, these are woodcut. These are not.
Wow.
Yes, these are woodcut. And I'll talk a little bit about Anna's woodcutting. Here are some other images now. She's famous for her insect work with her husband. This was something Anna was not a woodcutter, if you would. This was not her method of, her genre of art, I guess. She actually loved watercolor painting. And she talks about how she was making some watercolor paintings for her husband to illustrate his book in insects, and she was doing some pen and ink drawings, and he did not want that. He wanted her to study wood carving. And I've been talking with a friend of mine who is a woodworker, and my husband, who also works with wood. This wood carving with wood is cheaper than the copper plating. So this is, and knowing that and it really just resonated with me, because knowing that Comstock was wanting to produce a tome this thick, it would have been more financially, it would have been economical for them to have wood cuttings as opposed to the copper plating. So Anna, when you hear about Anna, when you read about her in Comstocks of Cornell, or when you read about her in other publications or articles, they always talk about, Anna the woodcarver, and she was a wonderful woodcutter, and she was an award-winning woodcutter. Yes, she was all of those things. These are her tools. What was surprising to me in your upper right-hand side there was how small those tools were. I don't know what I was expecting when I was going to look at her tools, but I did not expect them to be that small. But it does make sense for what she's doing, small, fine, detailed work, and I can tell you that they are still sharp. And I have some other images. This is a close-up of that dandelion image. I just think this is beautiful. And then she also did a cat for someone. Here is some more woodcutting images that are different from insects that I wanted to share with you. This was an image that she made for Martha Van Rensselaer, and up there on the upper right is an image she made for Glenn Herrick. And then these are others that she gifted. This was something that she enjoyed doing. She would make these for people and she would gift it to them. In looking in the archives, I looked about, I wanted to have, trying to think of how to present this to you. I wanted to, oh, wait, Riley, would you go back one? So now that the lights are off,
What's the medium of this?
pardon me?
What's the medium? Are these woodcuts? Or
These are woodcuts.
These are all woodcuts.
These are all woodcuts, yeah. So I wanted to, in trying to present this to you and the information, not only talking about Anna, but also the work in the archive, I arranged this sort of in a chronological order from her youth to, you know, cradle to grave, if you will. So these are some images and some artifacts that I found from Anna in her youth. You will see this picture, I'm sure you'll see, this is familiar to you, you've seen it before. This is intentional in my presentation. You will see a repeat of images, just so that, because I want to keep the image kind of in the forefront of your mind, and it's relevant to different parts of my talk, and I just think that they're beautiful, and so you will intentionally see repeats of images. This is her mother's scrapbook, and this picture of the Chamberlain Institute. This is where Anna went to her preparatory class before she went to college. This was a newspaper article that was in her mother's scrapbook, the Chamberlain Institute in Chautauqua County, New York. Anna grew up in Chautauqua County area of New York State in a town called Otto, New York. And when this building burned down, her mother had kept a newspaper clipping of that, and which to me was wonderful because to find a picture of the Institute was almost, that would be very difficult. There was pictures of her mother. Her parents were Quakers, and their Quaker background influenced, Anna was their only child, and their Quaker influence and their love of nature influenced a lot of Anna's upbringing. There is a picture from a newspaper and a photograph of their home in Otto, New York. Her father rented that property and farmed it most of his life. And again, here's another picture of her mother, and this is Anna at about the same time. She's about 17, 18 years old here, and this, so to me, she's about like maybe more towards 20 in this picture. As Anna about, she went on to Cornell, and here we are with Anna and Mr. Comstock. What was one of the other the bits that was interesting to me in the Comstocks of Cornell is she continuously, she's talking about Harry and Harry. Professor Comstock's name was John Henry Comstock. Harry was a pet family name that Anna's family used. Anna never called him Harry in public writings, if you will. Even in this book, throughout this book, she's referring to him as Harry. That is an editor's choice. In the manuscript, she refers to him without exception as Mr. Comstock. She does it, yes. So, which I thought was very interesting. I think she had a great respect for him, not only as a man, but also for the educator, especially, that he was. So that was also very interesting to me, as far as there was a newspaper. Here's a newspaper clipping that I found in another group of papers at the Rare Manuscript Collection. And in it shows that they were highlighting in that newspaper about a century ago the insect collected. So this would have been like in the 1950s. This newspaper article came out. And here is Mr. Comstock, and here is his student, Anna Botsford, down there, and they're getting ready to go out and catch some insects. This was a lovely little leather photo case that I found, and the two pictures of the Comstocks. I believe it was hers. The reason I believe it is hers was because of the flowers that are tooled on the front, but also because on the back of her picture, there's nothing written, but on the back of his picture is his name. And someone that I was speaking with in the archives, they said, well, how do you think it's hers? And I said, well, if it was me, I said, I wouldn't write my own name on the back of my own picture. I know me. I said, but I would put the name of my husband on the back. And I said, I've got it in my wallet now with my kids. I said, I put their names on, but I didn't write my name on there. So, and they're, oh, that makes sense. I said, yeah. I said, that's why I do believe this is hers. Mr. Comstock was famous, iconic in his mustache, and here he is actually with a full beard, which was for the time, stylish for the time, and yet it was, he was also a sailor on the Great Lakes, yes.
Are these your photographs? I'm wondering whether Cornell has digitized the book collection.
Cornell has digitized most of the collection. Most of these are my photographs that I took at the archives. There are a few towards the end of my presentation that I did pull off of their archival, the archives photo collection. So most of them are mine. That's okay, no, go ahead. Here is some more photos I found. Like I said, I'm trying to, this is a very photo-rich presentation, and it's intentional. Because there are photos that are a little bit more famous. They were used over and over again. The Comstocks annually would have a professional photographer come in and photograph different aspects of themselves or their lives or their property. And so a lot of these images were used again and again. What I am hoping to show you is that maybe there may be photos in here that you recognize, but maybe there might be something like, wow, I didn't see that. I've not seen that one before. That's kind of nifty. So that's why this is my presentation is photo rich. What I wanted to show here, this was their first home. This is called their Fall Creek home. They lived here for over 30 years. And then when Cornell took the property, that came down, and they went and lived in this home here, which is up on north of the campus on Roberts Place. A lot of the faculty, they lived up over there in that area. And here's the house right here, and then this chalet. This is what eventually became Comstock Publishing Company, and they built this Comstock in kind of, reminiscent of their first home. I found there's their marriage certificate is over there, and there was a Valentine gift for Mr. Comstock in 1891 that Anna made out of deerskin. Yes.
So Fall Creek home, does that still exist?
This, no, it does not exist. It was taken down because Cornell took the land back. Yep. And but the ledge, the house on Roberts Place was still there. And if the owner of that house is sitting here in this audience, yes, I did walk up to the sidewalk and look. But if you're not here, but anyway, and there's a sundial that we'll see later and that sundial is still there. And so I want to go knock on the door and say hi to those people. And here's an older photo of the Comstocks that appeared in the San Francisco newspaper. The Comstocks also, of course, they're famous for he was an entomologist. They were famous for their work with the insects. And they had an insectary that was built, and it was called quite hoopla on Cornell at the time. Some of the professor friends were like, well, you better keep those windows closed because I don't want these things flying around. And Professor Comstock said, well, those insects don't want to be biting any professors, anyway, so don't worry about it. And so this is fun seeing that we have on the front, we have the photo of the insectary, and it shows the greenhouse that they have. What's also nice is on the back side where they talk about it. The insectary was built in 1888. And I did find it in the Comstocks of Cornell, but it was for a cost of $2,500 at that time, which would be about $57,000 to $58,000 in today's dollars.
So inside that house is a lot of insects that are alive?
Yep, this was their in the greenhouse area. There was, they had some studio apartments in there. They had their workshops in the insectary, and that's where they did. That's where they did their work. I'm sorry.
Where was the insectary?
The insectary was on Cornell property.
It was near their house.
It was near their house.
I
Yeah.
think near Baker, where the 10th Street building is,
Okay.
in New York's up at that end of, what is that, East Avenue? I think it's one of the next to the last is where one of the houses has an insectary.
It had a view of BB Lake.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
there we go.
Exactly.
Yep. Two things I wanted to point out from this image was in the book that I have, that their signatures, which is always a thrill for me, because I just feel like I'm touching back into the past. I love that. And the other thing I wanted to point out about the book, the Manual of Insects, is the color photo. They were very proud of the color photo, and they truly loved that their book was that they were able to afford and have these color images. These are some pictures. One of the things that when I'm working in the archives and I'm looking and researching Anna is determining a time frame through the photographs. These, go ahead. In these photos here, Anna is in the middle. And this photo right here it might be a little bit more famous of Anna with holding a glass of something in her hand. But also what I found when I was looking at in the photos, I also found the other one. And what has always bothered me about this photo when I first saw this was the color of her hair. Because when you first look at this and you see the Cornell pennant and the students and all this, my first inclination is to think, oh, well, this is when she was a student. Well, actually, in identifying the photo, written on the back, it said that Anna Comstock with Glenn Herrick. Well, Glenn Herricks came to Cornell in the autumn of 1892, and he is seen in this picture here. Here he is seen here with Anna. And so Anna was in 1892, she was about in her mid-30s. So she went with Glenn Herrick to go, with the group of students, and she was socializing with them then. And also, because this is what Anna looked like at about age 18, just before she was going to Cornell. So you can see there's quite a difference. And the young woman here, that up at the top above Anna, that became Glenn Herrick's wife. Some more photos of the Comstocks. This is a photo of a painting that now hangs in Comstock Hall. And in this photo, I love this because she's holding her glasses and he's holding a cigar. Later, after Mr. Comstock suffered his strokes, she said that he took to smoking his cigars again. She was so happy because she felt like it was like some sort of return to normalcy because he always smoked cigars. Again, this is an image that just says Anna Comstock at home. I'm not sure which home this is. I don't know if this is yet. I do not know yet if this is Otto, New York, or if this is in Fall Creek. But I love this image of her looking out the window. Here is something else to look at in photos. When you see these photos like this, take a look at her ankles and her feet. You can see that she was suffering. She had heart problems and and cancer later in life. So you can see that there was already some sort of pathological condition, having its work with her. These are photos of them taken when they went sabbatical in Egypt. He's on a camel, she's on a donkey, and on the back of this photo talks about she makes note that the donkey was wearing a necklace, and that really tickled her. And then there's this. This is one of my favorite photos of her. This is taken in about 1907. That was in Italy. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this. And about this time in 1906, this is where Anna really broke away and wrote her own work. Her works to date included, up until this point we were talking about, included the work that she did on the nature study leaflets with Liberty Hyde Bailey and other people in the nature study department. But then in 1903, and so that was almost 25 years of work that she collaborated with others. However, she wanted to have something of her own. And in 1903, she took what was a collection of works that she had written and she put it together in one book. And that was The Ways of the Six-Footed. And then in 1905, she wrote another book on how to keep bees. This, in 1906, was when she wrote Confessions to a Heathen Idol. And this is a book. Anna Comstock wrote diaries, and we cannot lay my hands on those diaries. And so what she was gifted a teak idol, she called it. It was like a teak carving from Japan. And she sat that on her desk, and she would write her diary to that idol. Like, if you're a Dear Diary, today I ate a pork chop, So, but what she did is she wrote to that heathen idol. She would be like, oh, heathen idol, or she would some flowery language about that. And she took her diaries and she formed it and she created a book. And she was, on one hand, she wanted this book because I believe she wanted something of her own, but at the same time, because of her husband's reputation and her reputation and her credibility, she wrote it under a pseudonym, Marion Lee. And in the copy that I have here of this book, and I brought these books to show you if anyone wanted to look at it later, she signed this book both with Marion Lee, and then underneath she signed it with Botsford Comstock. She created the Marion Lee, she said those, in Comstocks of Cornell, she says, those who know me well know where I got the name from. And digging through letters, I found that she read this book in 1872, and in talking to a letter from her friend, it was like, oh, I have to get a hold of that book, The Marble Faun. It was Nathaniel Hawthorne's last novel. And Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote The Marble Faun after he saw the statue in Italy of the faun Praxiteles. And he was inspired to write this book. Well, this book was all the rage. It was printed in 1860, and Anna was 18 years old when she got a hold of this book, and it was quite, for its time, a thrilling love story triangle. And in there, the main character of the book was Marion. And Marion is synonymous with Miriam. So I believe that she got the name Marion from the character Miriam. There were several books that Anna had read in her lifetime that really, I felt, defined who she was, and I think defined her, of who she was and her feelings, and I believe that this is one of those books. The language in the Confessions of the Heathen Idol is absolutely beautiful. The vocabulary is off the hook. There are words there that I had no idea, but but this like platitudinously, that's how it appears in the book. That's why I did that as I say, because I didn't want to think that I was necessarily misspelling. But the vocabulary is amazing, and that there are the themes of the story. What it is a story of a 40-year-old woman and who is a widow, a widow. And there is a young man who falls in love with her, and then there's an older man about her age who also has a romantic interest. And so what she's talking, I have read that, and this is kind of quoted, that it is felt that this book is autobiographical. Now, who said that originally? It is felt. I don't know. But I agree. I do believe that this book is autobiographical. It's the closest thing that we have, right now, to her diaries. And so there were things that are very reminiscent of Cornell University life. Yes.
At the bottom there, it says definition of a kiss.
Yes.
Do you have that for us?
Do actually, no. I don't. I mean, I do, but I don't. I mean, I can.
That's for Saturday night.
That's for Saturday. Yes, but these were some themes that she talked about over, repeatedly in the book. And this is just a few things that I have pulled. Obeying the laws of nature, thinking versus one's consciousness, working a room at a party. The Comstocks were famous for their parties and the gatherings that they had at their home. In fact, I have found a grocery receipt of the meat bill from the butcher that in 1 month's time they purchased 63 pounds of meat. I can tell you that they loved lamb and they loved figs. Yes. She talks about how professors may write a book. She talks about happiness, being angry, and of course the definition of a kiss. These are some passages from the Confessions which I thought were beautiful, and I felt were really reminiscent of Anna, truly of her thoughts and her feelings. Strange, is it not, said I, how happiness is meted out of us by making us choose between the greater and lesser hurts. Joy never seems to be perfect, it is joy simply by contrast. This one I thought was very interesting. It has always been my faulty way to make believe that I'm whatever suits circumstances to make me. The moment that some chance happening gives me the cue, I dash madly onto the stage and seem to have no choice, but must play the part allotted to me, whether it is really mine or not. That's very, yes. This book is not in print, but you can find it like on Aid Books, Rare Books. And it depends, and the cost varies from there, depending on, whether it's signed or not signed, but you can talk about $25. Pardon me? I think they do have a copy. I don't know, only because I have my own copy. I mean, because with my stuff, I went out and doing my research, I got a lot of these books myself. And again, and some more that I thought, this one was really interesting to me because of not only what the book is about, but also I just felt that this spoke of Anna more, as a person, personally, as a woman. I will tell you a secret, which I discovered some time since. Some of the heart's experiences are auricular and some ventricular, but it is only once in a lifetime that the whole heart is concerned. That's beautiful, and that is interesting. And of course, she was a nature study educator, nature writer. She read books of nature poetry, and this passage here with the moon still a crescent was hanging against the luminous green of western horizon. This is a quote that this is also throughout the book. Beautiful descriptors of nature.
Liberty Hyde Bailey also wrote a book.
Yes, I know. Yes, I'm sure that I think that it was something that they used in expressing their times. That that's how they expressed themselves, was through their poetry. And he was a prolific writer of poetry. Wind and Weather is a beautiful volume of Liberty Hyde Bailey's poetry, if you're ever wanting to investigate some of the works that he has done. Here are some more photos of Anna that I thought would be interesting to show. There's Anna over at, this is a Cascadillo Bridge, I believe. But anyway, I just love that she's on the campus and she's here. This is also a bit of a famous photo of her, but this image was taken, this was Anna Comstock, who was my godmother. Some other photos, like I said earlier, they were very much in the habit of having themselves photographed. These, I think, are fun because it shows John Comstock, yours sincerely, John H. Comstock, without facial hair, with lots of facial hair, and then we're starting to pare down a little bit when he became a professor until he finally came to just, the mustache.
What was the age difference between them? When did he die?
He died about 6 to 7 months after she passed, actually in 1931. She died in August of 1930. He died in February of 1931. There was about, I think, 7 to 8 year age difference between the two of them. This is one of the treats that I found in the archives. This is called Greetings and Best Wishes from the Comstocks. It was a little book, gift book that they put together, and I believe that this was around about Christmas time, because there was from the Gages, there was Merry Xmas from the Gages. It was written on the cover of one of these. I've come across about 3 of these books, and what they are is they're photographs taken around their property that they are glued into the booklet. And the way the booklet is set up is that you start at the gate of their house and on Robert's Place, and this is also known as the ledge. It can get a little confusing. And then it's kind of like you're walking through the property. And so as we walk, we start at the gate, and we hear the sundial. This is what I said is still there, and here's a watercolor painting that she made of the sundial. And then you're walking down the path and turning around and looking back at the sundial. And here is a picture of this is the Chalet Comstock Publishing. What I like, I found one version of this booklet that was a gift from the Gages to someone, and then I found the second booklet, and this was, I think, their personal copy because she wrote underneath for each picture. She wrote, like, for example, on this image, she wrote autumn days and autumn years, the laurel seat. There's the ledge gate, and then this is the bird bath. That was in their yard. This image was very sobering to me, this particular card, or the photograph. On the back of it was written to Winifred from Uncle Harry, and Aunt Anna. This is one of the last snapshots taken of your uncle before he was taken sick. And I believe one of the difficult things in trying to date this using pictures is that Professor Comstock often wore the same thing. He was very, I think this must have been his, going to meeting clothes. You know, he always wore a dark suit with a white shirt. So you'll often see, you know, from like in this photo to this photo, and this photo he's wearing the white shirt and vest, three-piece suit. And so he's like, okay, now. So actually, the way that I kind of gauge the age of the photos is I look at her. So this photo to me is actually a younger image of them than these two photos. And this photo, I found another one. This was after he had already suffered. There's a blanket over the banister here, and he's leaning on the banister. He's already at this point, I think he had already suffered one stroke, a minor stroke. And I think that what they're referring to before he was taken sick is that he suffered a series of strokes, and then he became an invalid and he could not speak anymore. And that was in the last couple of years of her life. And here is Anna. She had, again, this is a picture of her. There's a couple of different views of this picture. She loved this sundial. This is her in the picture in celebration of her 65th year. And I think that these photos are all about the same time.
Now, I just say something, that picture of the 65th birthday is a picture of that at Camp Comstock.
Oh, okay, nice. I have not been there yet.
Yeah, I have to tell you about that.
Yeah, no, but this is a very, these photos are very, they were passed, there's a few of them
But
that
that's
people
the
see.
frame one of that one.
Yes, that is, they are seen around. So that's why I tried to put, you know, some other different photos that may be not seen. Thank you. So what's interesting is here's 65, here she is now at 75. And she puts, and again, taking a look kind of on the medical forensic part of this, is just take a look at her ankles and feet here. And you can see here, she also, they said she had she died of cancer. I should take that back, she had cancer, and she also had a heart condition. So you can also see how thin and frail she is here, but yet look at how swollen her feet and ankle are. And what I love on this, you know, she puts on the bottom of this 75th birthday and still carrying on. And this, I believe, this is to me, this is the last photograph of her taken. There is no date, but just in looking at her and I just feel this is the last photo of her that was taken. And it's quite different from, you know, the earlier images. Yes?
Are you familiar with the rice heritage college? Anyway, I know the family who owns it, and she spent her about time there. I can't remember the connection between her and rice.
You know, I can't, I have seen different things, writings on, I'm always finding stuff. And also when I look at this with new eyes, it's almost like I'm kind of going back and like, what was this again? What was that again? I remember her writing about Taganic, and she would talk to the students about riding their bikes from Ithaca up to Taganic Falls, and how they spent time at Taganic and so forth. But that name is not unfamiliar to me.
What is the name? Rice family.
Rice family.
So he was the whole chicken guy.
Yeah,
All the time.
yeah, and I think that he wrote for the Cornell study leaflets as well on poultry. So this is, now I'm going to talk about Anna in some other places. This is a famous, this is also a photograph of her, and from this photograph there was a painting that was created, and this painting is it originally hung at Comstock Hall, and it now resides in Mann Library. Also in Mann Library is her desk. And this is, she had an old-fashioned, you can go up to the 3rd floor of Mann Library and you can put your hands on the desk, because that's what I did. When I saw it, I almost laid across it shamelessly. I was so happy. And then, so this is her, she had a big roll-top desk with a lot of little compartments. And then right next to her is Professor Comstock's desk, and he had a smaller desk, and here's a photo of him working at his desk. And now to this. This might look familiar to one or two of you. And these are, this is the stained glass windows downstairs. Anna became a member of your church. Her signature is right here. Mark Peterson opened up the books for me, and we took a look. And on June 11th, 1911, this would be about the time that she was writing. It was just before her Handbook of Nature Study was published. And so she was working on it very heartily. She became a member of your church, and then someone wrote here afterwards that she died in 1930. These windows were actually, they were a gift. I don't know too much about the windows. I know only a little bit about them. They were a gift from George and Ada Russell.
Her name was Alma.
Alma, that's right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you,
That's
Alma.
who it is.
Okay, Alma. They were a gift from George and Alma Russell. George was also known, and it was a little confusing at first because in Comstocks of Cornell, she keeps referring to Jim. I'm like, who the heck is Jim? Well, Jim was actually George Russell. He came to them as an undergraduate student. They took him in, and he became like a surrogate son to them, and they were close to both of them and their children through the rest of their lives. And after Anna had passed away, George commissioned these windows to be made in her honor, as not as a member of the church, but also for the work that she had done. But there is not a plaque that I know of. There is not a plaque there because it was understood from him. He did not want the focus to be on him and their monetary donation for this window. They wanted the focus to be about that this is about Anna and what she brought to the children of the community. Here's some more. Anna's also, of course, surprise, surprise, seen at Cornell University. And here is an etching, a wood cutting that she made of the tower. And here is that see autumn days and autumn years. And this is also a little bit of a placard hanging in Comstock Hall. And this is the nature study summer school. She and Liberty High Bailey had summer school classes, and there are many of the people that the buildings around Cornell University are named for. They're in this photograph. And I don't know quite everybody, but I can point out that here's Anna right here. Here is Professor Comstock. This is Liberty High Bailey, and I know that this is John Spencer. He was known as Uncle John, and he worked very closely with Anna in her nature study writings. And there's others, but I don't even want to surmise a guess because I don't want to get it wrong.
You know what the Liberty High Valley and Comstock were friends was at Camp Comstock. There is a place called Bailiwick, which was his summer home.
I have read, yes, they were very good friends, and what I have read that while they were both still living, he actually willed the property of Bailiwick to be given for children's education, and she wrote a letter back to him saying, I thank you so much for this. I cannot tell you what it means to me that you have done this.
And there's evidence of trees being grafted in the ranger's backyard of the Girl Scout camp.
Okay.
You can tell by looking at them that they were apple trees that were grafted.
Yeah. So they were very close, and in fact, in Bailey's papers are photographs of Mr. and Mrs. Comstock. They were very close and well respected. And in fact, when Anna died, Bailey gave her eulogy, and he said that her life was a poem. And he was talking about how well she was loved. And the sense that I got in reading his words in her eulogy was not only was she loved, but she was beloved. She was just a wonderful, dynamic woman. Here is the images at Comstock Hall. Here is that photograph from earlier of a painting that was made. What she did is they had the photograph taken and they mailed the photograph to other friends of the image. And here is the painting itself hanging in Comstock Hall. Again, there's that other.
Would you remind me where Comstock Hall is on the campus?
I
Is
think
that
it's
the
Gardner. It's on Gardner.
Van?
It's as you're on Tower Road and you would turn south onto Gardner, it's on the left. It has, I think, changed its location.
That's right, they built a new building.
Yes, they built a new building for Comstock Hall.
It's next to Teagle,
Next to Teagle.
opposite Barton.
Okay, thank you. Next to Teagle, opposite Barton Hall. Okay. This is also something that I found in Glenn Herricks' papers, and this is the undergraduate group. And you may have to help me with the name of this, but the Jugate, and this is an undergraduate club at Cornell. And in this, and what was wonderful about this photograph at the time is that these are, this is the entomology department. And here we have, and Professor Comstock is not here. In 19, there is a question mark. I have here Jugate 1922 question mark because that's what they have up here. And so at 1922, Professor Comstock was already retired by now, and he was revising a manual of entomology that he had created earlier in his career, and he was working on that, and he might have been, I believe he was traveling on a sabbatical away at the time of this photograph. So it is my feeling that Mrs. Comstock is sitting in for him, representing him. And Mrs. Comstock Anna is right here. And this is Professor Gage. The Gages and the Comstocks were very dear friends, that they lived close to each other. Here is some other names you may recognize. This is Needham. This is Professor Needham and his wife. And then there is, this guy. You may have heard of Mann Library. This is Mann. This is Professor Mann. And there's others that are, and here, right here is Herrick. Miss Glenn Herrick, and his cousin and his wife. Or excuse me, that's right. So I guess the takeaway message that I want is that Anna was a remarkable woman with a poet's soul, and she had a very feisty, lovely spirit that just drew other people to her. And there were things about her that, there's so much about her that is, I don't want to say that is lost, but in a way it is lost because the reputation of the Comstocks of Cornell usurped her own personality. And she carried with her, it's interesting, Mr. Comstock carried with him, it was a series of volumes of 6 novelettes. It was the Count of Monte Cristo. And then that was he would take 1 or 2 of those volumes with him whenever he traveled, and that's what he read. And that is a story, familiar with the Count of Monte Cristo, of a man who is imprisoned by circumstances, breaks free, and becomes his own man of his own means. She carried, which is an interesting parallel to his own life. She carried with her Wordsworth's Prelude. And from the opening page of the Preludes, this was a treatise that Wordsworth wrote about from youth and growing older and appreciating life. And on the very first page I took this quote. I could have read the entire first page, but I took this quote, that the earth is all before me with a heart joyous, nor scarred at its own liberty. I look about, and should the guide I choose be nothing better than a wandering cloud, I cannot miss my way. I read this book, I read this page, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can see how she could have been so riveted by the beauty of this book. And this is a book that she carried with her. This is actually how it's spelled in the book. Make sure I said that. She also carried, and she talks about this in Confessions to a Heathen Idol. There's a couple of books that the characters that she read, and that these characters kind of gifted amongst themselves. And she read one of them was a book. It's called The Casada, which was printed at that time, and it has this is an example of the type of artwork, quite provocative for the early 20th century. And she gifted these books, the Prelude and also Bob Stories, which was written by the Sullivan, the opera.
Arthur Sullivan.
Yes, and he wrote the operettas with. Gilbert and Sullivan, that's it, that's right. This was the Sullivan hat, and he wrote these, and they were like sort of funny little stories and vignettes, and something that they would read aloud. This is the Bob story, and then something that they would read aloud, and they would have dinner parties together, and then someone would play the piano and entertain, someone would read poetry. So these were books that greatly influenced her, and I think it also spoke to her, to who she was as a person, and spoke to her spirit. I just wanted to, putting up some of these others, there's another etching that she made. This is her, Anna, in her garden. And then this again is here is another page taken out of the manuscript that was edited. And here is a watercolor painting that she made of yes.
Have you thought about trying to recreate the original from the ends?
Oh, yeah. Okay. And I wanted to say, in conclusion, I wanted to thank you all for inviting me here to speak to your lovely group. And I also wanted to thank all of my friends at the RNC. They are first names only because that's how I know them. I could not tell you their last names because everyone to me is Laura, Eileen, Elaine I know first. And then there's Jude, Aisha, Hillary, Teo, and Cheryl. I'd like to thank Ed and Randy and Bob, especially for supporting me. It means more than I can express to you here. And I also want to thank my family and friends, especially my husband Kevin, who's listened to this time and time again. And also to anyone I have ever met in a grocery store line or in the library or in the department who has had the patience to listen to me prattle on about Anna Comstock. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I hope we can invite you back for the sequel.
Sure, I can talk about all different aspects of Anna. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions about anything, I would be happy to answer.
I'd like to say that first of all, I've met a few women ever attended Comstock camp, Girl Scout camp.
Our daughter worked
Okay.
there.
And you have an affiliation with, well, I think the land was given by the Paints, P-A-I-N-E, to the Girl Scout camp. And they have about a half a mile of shoreline, which is, quite expensive. You don't know how much it is a foot on the lake. And it's now become the gem of the Girl Scout Council, which is the New York Pen. And it was named after her. And we used to sing a song, Botsford Comstock, to thy name we sing, but I don't know the rest of it. So the girls, the kids who go there know about Botsford Comstock.
Nice.
And I was a director in 83, 84, 91. In 83, we had one toilet. The rest were latrines. We still have latrines. And I could go on and on, but I probably feel I should talk to you privately rather than bore these people about the Girl Scout camp.
Yes.
To get a fuller sense of what a wonderful person she was, do you have things like testimonials about her, maybe at her memorial service?
Yes, I do. I have this. I have been doing this research for almost 3 years now, and it's I was talking with my husband about this. One of the conundrums I have is that there's so much in here. It's like how to organize it and bring it out to everyone. But yes, I do have.
What's the difference between a historian and histologist?
Well, a histologist studies disease at the cellular level. Animals and humans. Yes.
I really like the way you brought out the actual process of delving into the archives and your particular enthusiasm for doing that. Can you tell us what's the current lag time between ordering something and actually getting it at the desk?
It depends. If you order something and they have it there on site, you can have it that day. But if something is at the annex, you have to allow them, I usually give them about a week to get it. So, because there are some things that are more popular than others to look at,
I've been there to look into William Henry Miller's, our architect's stuff from roughly the same period.
Yes.
It was fascinating.
Yes, it is. It's fun. And the reason that I do this is not only because it's a personal interest for me, but I think history is important because it gives us a precedent. It gives us a point. Now we hear a lot about sustainability and upcycle and recycle and all sorts of things. And like I know my daughters, they're but they are kind of like, they're all on Twitter about like, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, and we've got to look at nature and we've got to preserve these different things. And I'm also thinking of my other daughter, Haley, And, you know, and it's like, yeah, I know. They've been talking about this for over 100 years. And this is wonderful. It's not to say, see, I told you so, or I'm right. It's not that. It's like to show the future generations, like, look, there is a precedence. This is something that we've been talking about and struggling with. Let's take a look back and let's try to learn from this and let's pull it forward. You know, there's a lot of lessons and material that she talks about that is information that is being recycled over and over again, and a lot of it has come from this nature study movement. It's come from Anna Comstock and Liberty Hyde Bailey, and it can be relevant to today. Yes?
When I was at the lab of ornithology and I was going back in history of what it had done and Dr. Allen, I came across these little class outlines that you could use to teach nature. And I thought, oh, how nice, and that a professor would be involved with school children, I thought was amazing. But then later, when I came across Anna's stuff, it looks to me like they just borrowed, sort of lock, stock, and barrel, and sort of were expanding on what she had already done. It wasn't anything original.
Yeah, yeah. It's really, she really is a pioneer in her field. In 1923, she was voted along with Martha Van Rensselaer as one of the top 12 most influential women in the United States. And what's interesting is there was another woman there. I only, forgive me, but I only know her as Julia. Julia was her roommate, but Julia then went on to become the first woman president of Bryn Mawr College, and she was also included in that group. You know, they're really quite something, and I find all sorts of interesting bits of how they kind of were dampened for the times. You know, at that time women could not vote. She was a respectable woman of a Cornell professor. God forbid she should have her own thought.
Or her own degree.
Or her own degree. And her husband's life became her life. And I think that when she was writing Confessions to a Heathen Idol, I think that was a time of her life where she really had great struggle and great frustration with, not that she didn't like what she was doing, she didn't appreciate what she was doing, but she, as she says in the book, she wanted something of her own, and that's why she fought to have the Handbook for Nature Study printed. She really wanted her own voice. Does anyone else have any questions? No? Well, thank you all so much. I really enjoyed it.